Why do we love Game of Thrones?
Of chits and wine.
It was only a matter of time before I decided to take on Game of Thrones, and it feels like a pretty sure thing considering it's watched by, let me check, pretty much everyone on the freaking planet, and those who don't watch it, well, they don't know what they're missing out on. I'd love to say that I figured out how to do this video spoiler free, but like, the show's been going for 8 years now, so come on, how could I not be specific? Sorry, spoilers. A question I've been asking myself for a while is, what is it about this show that gets all of us so fired up, gets all of us so passionate and absorbed and obsessed? What is it about this big, wild, medieval fantasy that we just can't seem to get enough of? I feel like we'd all be lying if we didn't say that we'd each had a problem or two along the way, even if it's nothing major. Like a lot of people, I had my fair share of issues with season 7, I mean, yikes! So why after everything am I still so completely enamored with this show? It's got sex, it's got violence, it's got dragons, sometimes all at the same time. Don't ask me how that works, it just does. But Game of Thrones is so much more than that, and today I want to get to the source of that one thing that got me so hooked in the first place. If I can find what it is for me, maybe you'll find it for yourself too. Hi, my name is Bailey, and this is why I love I think it's important to make it clear straight up that I'm talking purely in terms of the TV show, though I do feel like pretty much most of the credit needs to go to book author George R.R. Martin for actually crafting this whole gig in the first place. Obviously, we wouldn't be where we are now without showrunners David Benioff and Dan Wise, along with their crazy, beautifully talented team of writers, directors, and everyone else, but this is George's world, and we're all just living in it. Thank you, sweet book Santa. And this is some fucking world he created, right? Like, just look around. We aren't getting fantasy stories told on this scale with this level of skill anywhere outside of maybe games. Look, I don't think there's another show out there that has the capacity to hit us with jaw-dropping awe quite like Game of Thrones does. I could name a dozen shows that top Game of Thrones for me when it comes to storytelling creativity and straight up emotional murder. Yes baby, I'm talking about you because Jesus fuck wow! But if we're being real, no one, and I mean no one, is going toe-to-toe with Game of Thrones when it comes to sheer majesty and explosive, skull-rattling action. I mean really, is anyone even close to playing in the same ballpark as the series that gave us Battle of the Bastards? I don't think so. There's something about that kind of carnage that just sucks us right in, and it's actually not the carnage itself, but what's underneath it. After all, action is empty without characters at stake, and boy oh boy does Game of Thrones know a thing or two about putting lives on the line. See, I'd argue that our addiction to the show doesn't come from the kick of seeing some big-ass fire lizard just blasting across the screen. I mean, that's some good shit for sure, but I think we're addicted to the fact that no one is safe in Game of Thrones, and when you couple that with the fact that things can go from bad to worse for anyone in any situation at any time, you've got a formula for TV cocaine. There aren't many shows that harness the storytelling power of death quite like this one, and it comes down to one very simple rule that defined most of the writing in the first 5 seasons. Don't kill the character until their death fucks over as many other people as possible. That shocking moment that Ilan Payne's sword swung through the neck of Ned Stark wasn't just to get a rise out of us, though it sure as hell did. Killing the main character straight up leveled the playing field and set off the mania of the events that followed. Treating death like that allows Game of Thrones to constantly remix itself and drastically change the tide of the story in the aftermath, to the point that even the smallest of fatalities can ripple up to have massive consequences. Where a lot of TV likes to kill off its characters to get an emotional response from you, Game of Thrones uses death to create chaos for those left behind, and it's those that are left behind that anchor us to the game.
I have a tender spot in my heart for cripples, bastards, and broken things.
Here's a question. Who is Game of Thrones about? Is it about the kings, the queens, the powerful lords and ladies of Westeros? Is it about the brave commanders, the honourable knights? Or is it about the underdogs, the people stepped on by those more powerful than them, the people who are beat down, bent, betrayed, cast aside and overlooked? Sure, by now most of them are kings and queens themselves, the lords and ladies, the commanders and the knights, but it wasn't so long ago that every one of those still standing was fighting with everything they had just to survive. These are the cripples, the bastards, and the broken things, and no matter how you feel about them today, because yeah, Cersei is still a bitch, these are the champions of this story. The reason we care so fucking much about who we have left is because we've watched for 7 seasons as these characters have been forced into the absolute worst situations again and again and again, and we cheered as they continually rose to the occasion to overcome the kind of things most of us could never even begin to imagine going through. In every single case, the circumstances that put them where they are were out of their control, and that's the kind of injustice that we're magnetized to empathize with.
I'm guilty of being a dwarf.
It's really hard not to feel for someone who, through no fault of their own, gets dunked on every single day of their life just because they're a woman, or a bastard, or a dwarf, and it's even harder not to care when that person fights with everything they have to be seen as just that, a person. In a way, I think Game of Thrones is a show about people rising out of suffering to get what they're owed, and most of the time, what they're owed is being seen for who they are, not what they are, and the only way to get there in this story is to go through hell.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win, or you die.
By the time a character has made it 8 seasons into the show, they're pretty much a winner, but all of them had to die to get there. Valar Morghulis, as they say. All men must die. Some, I guess, kind of literally. Jesus, that still hurts. But all these characters died a death of identity and were reborn as someone holding the set of cards they need to win the great game, which by now we're smart enough to know isn't about the Iron Throne. It's about surviving to claim your place in the world. Daenerys, Jon, Tyrion, Sansa, Arya, Bran, all these characters rose from the ashes of their former selves as people readily equipped to take on those that would threaten them, and after so long in the dirt, the latest seasons have seen them finally begin to take back all they'd lost in the most satisfying of ways. Those personal victories are what they are owed. Dany has been underestimated over and over and over again, almost always because she's just a girl, and every time she comes up against one of these dumbasses who tries to play her or abuse her or treat her like she's worth less than she knows she is. Jesus Christ, she just burned that guy alive! I guess if you play with fire, you're gonna get burned, and the ass-kicking Targaryen queen emerges from the ashes of those who wrong her every time, just a little stronger than before. It feels to me like Jon has fought his way through literal hell more times than anyone else in this show, and every time he's fought the good fight, done the honourable thing, the just thing, the thing that took courage and an open heart, and doing that cost him his life. Every battle made him stronger, but it's not until after a sneaky little magical resurrection that he finally gets the respect that he's owed. Much the same, Tyrion can't seem to catch a break for the first 4 seasons as he's dragged by everyone from his father, his sister, his nephew, and pretty much the whole of Westeros, and as much as he'd probably never admit it, he's never not done the just thing. And it's not until he's able to face his father and escape to Meereen that he finds himself being truly appreciated for what makes him special. Both Sansa and Theon are subject to the worst kind of bullshit anyone could go through at the hands of the most disgustingly cruel characters in Westeros, and it felt like forever before they were able to strike back at the people who hurt them to regain their honor. But their time still came. And these character rebirths aren't restricted to the good guys per se. No one's really going to argue the merits of someone like Jon Snow, but I'd hardly say that Theon was going to get a Nobel Peace Prize before Ramsay decided to barbecue his balls. The most interesting rebirths have been of the characters at the opposite end of the moral spectrum, guys like Jaime and the Hound, who had so much pent-up anger and malice because of being so fundamentally misunderstood for so long, to the point that their misunderstood identity identities became the only face they knew, because it was the only face that kept them in control. And so when that face shattered, they were finally given the opportunity to move towards a more empathetical version of themselves, and while that transformation can't ever really equate to full redemption, the fact that they're actually trying to fight for others has to be worth something, right?
We're going to leave the world better than we found it.
I think the reason we love Game of Thrones, at least up till now, is because it reminds us that despite all we endure, despite all the horrible, heinous shit people inflict on each other, we still have empathy, and our compassion and inherent goodwill is what ties us all together. That's why we're so drawn to this show. We love watching shit burn and crave seeing the blood flow because carnage is fun in that gladiator pit kind of way. But the reason we're still coming back to this show after all the times we've been hurt by it is the promise of something better for our characters just over the horizon, even when we know that the reality can still get worse. Even after Ned, after Robb, after Catelyn, after Oberyn, after everyone that we lost to the game, I think we keep coming back because deep down, somewhere, we crave the empathy that this crazy fantasy show fills us with. Game of Thrones presents us at our absolute worst, but it also celebrates us at our best. It reminds us that bad people can change because even the best of us make mistakes. Even the best of us have faults in judgment. We can't always see the consequences of our decisions as we make them, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn and atone if given the chance. Being the good guy doesn't always mean that you win, and that's not fair. But trying to do right by others is actually worth something, and Game of Thrones never tries to discourage that. It champions it. I think that deep down, beneath all the sex and violence and fire-breathing dragons, we love Game of Thrones because it urges us that there's a better version of ourselves to strive towards, and if more of us try to find that version, we're going to leave the world better than when we found it. And that's why I love. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video on Game of Thrones, then please go ahead and check out Make Stuff's video on the series. Jonathan is outright one of my favorite creators on this platform, and his work is seriously special, with this video being no different. You can check it out through the link in the description and in the pinned comment. It's just go and watch it. You'll enjoy it. You'll love it. Trust me. Thank you to everyone who has watched this video. It means the absolute world to me. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this series and this video in the comments. Please let me know why you love Game of Thrones. And if you haven't done so already, you should definitely subscribe to this channel to see more content like this, hopefully every 3 weeks from now on, if not sooner. We'll see how I go. You can keep up to date with what I'm doing on Twitter at Loverboy Media. And of course, if you really want to help support this channel, you can support me on Patreon. Thank you so much to anyone who is doing that already. I literally would not be able to survive without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I love all of you. Thank you again for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.